When Shen Furong smashed the inkstone on his desk, Pei Zhao finally looked up. The floor was a mess of shattered porcelain. She was gasping for breath, her tears falling into the ink, blurring into a dark smudge. If you love Yang Wenqing, why don't you marry her? I will go beg the emperor to grant your union. The latter half of her sentence was firmly muffled by a hand. Pei Zhao pressed himself close, a chilling coldness in his eyes.
Wenqing cannot reclaim her identity as a woman. If you expose her, how is she supposed to live?
He looked down at her, as if looking at an ignorant child.
Furong, you don't understand her suffering, but don't push things too far.
She bit down hard on his wrist. Beads of blood seeped out. He frowned but did not let go. Only today did she understand. It wasn't that Pei Zhao didn't know how to protect someone. It was just that the one he protected was never her. I was married to Pei Zhao for 3 whole years. Yet, I remained a virgin. He kept himself chaste for his beloved, never willing to take a single step into my room. I cried and clamored for a divorce. Yet Pei Zhao actually scolded me for the sake of his beloved.
Furong, you do not understand her grief and suffering, but you must not push things too far.
Once I woke up, I had actually returned to the day the emperor bestowed the marriage. My father, holding the imperial decree, asked me uneasily.
Father knows you are sweet on Pei Zhao. Father will reject this marriage for you.
Recalling that phrase, push things too far, I reached out and took the imperial decree. Pei Zhao, in this lifetime, I will not push you too far. Back then, my father was just a butcher. Fortunately, he followed the right master, and is now considered one of the founding veterans, who helped His Majesty win the empire. When he said he would refuse the marriage, he really would have dared to take the imperial decree. His Majesty to rescind the order. In the past, because of my infatuation with Pei Zhao, I rejected this marriage without even looking at the imperial decree. But now, I reached out, pulled the imperial decree from my father's arms, and opened it. This marriage bestowed by His Majesty was to Cui Mingjue, the renowned eldest son of the prestigious Cui clan of Qinghe, a gentleman as pure as light, as beautiful as a flawless jade. This was the praise reserved for the eldest young master of the Cui family, who was known in court as a crane standing among orchids. No matter how high an official rank His Majesty bestowed upon my father, we still could not scale the heights of such an illustrious family. Father, I heard myself say, your daughter is willing to marry him. The Cui clan of Qinghe was the head of the noble families, with as many disciples under their wing as fish in the river. Even a son from a concubine's line or a branch family would be seen as an ideal son-in-law by others, let alone the eldest son of the main lineage. With such a wonderful marriage, it is clear the emperor put a great deal of thought into it. I only sighed at how foolish I had been in my past life, discarding a fine jade to choose a worthless fisheye. I stopped my father's movements, hearing my words. He called out my childhood name.
Yang.
Father stood up.
Did Pei Zhao do something? Did he wrong you?
After so many years, hearing this name called again, I could not help but burst into tears. In the past, I had insisted on marrying Pei Zhao, so father used his years of military merit to decline the imperial marriage for me. Since then, father was never able to advance further in court, and was even demoted and sent out of the capital. Suzhou was far away, over mountains and roads, and fearing he would worry about me, I never dared to mention my many grievances. It wasn't until he heard the news of my death that he rushed to the capital overnight to collect my remains. The moment he saw the coffin, the great general who had once fought through blood and swords seemed to have all his strength drained away. He fell to his knees before my coffin. At that moment, I could only watch my father suddenly cough up a pool of fresh blood, calling out my childhood name over and over with a heart full of sorrow.
Yang, father has come to take you home.
Only in this lifetime could I finally return home. The rumor of Shen Furong's betrothal to the eldest son of the Cui family soon became the talk of the capital. There was no other reason. Cui Mingjue's reputation was simply far too illustrious. He was 2 years older than me. Before his coming-of-age ceremony, matchmakers had already worn down the threshold of the Cui residence. Even the emperor had personally inquired about his marriage, yet the Cui family had politely declined all offers. But in the end, they betrothed him to a butcher's daughter. The noble ladies of the capital, holding themselves in high regard, never used to include me in their social circles. But now, driven by curiosity, invitations to various banquets poured into my estate like snowflakes. Pei Zhao also paid a visit, accompanying his mother. Pei Zhao and I had known each other since childhood. When his father traveled to the capital for the imperial examinations back then, it was my mother who lent him 500 taels of silver for his travel expenses. Later, when he passed the exams and rose to high rank, he promised my mother that their future children would marry, to continue the friendship between the two families. From a young age, everyone around me told me that Pei Zhao would be my future husband. Thus, Pei Zhao was exceptionally patient and gentle with me. So, when my heart first bloomed with love, my entire world revolved around Pei Zhao. When he went to Qinghe Academy, I studied hard to take the exams to follow him. The academy did not accept female disciples, so I studied diligently every single day, putting in 100 times more effort than ordinary people. Only later did I learn that Pei Zhao had gone to Qinghe Academy, merely to catch a few more glimpses of the one he truly loved. At this moment, the aroma of tea drifted in the air. My father was pulled away to the main hall to discuss official matters, deliberately leaving Pei Zhao and me behind here. Through the hazy steam of the tea, I quietly studied Pei Zhao's face with my gaze. Even though we had lived together day and night for 3 years in my past life, yet now I still feel as if we are worlds apart. The unreality of being alive still tightly envelops me. His eyes seemed veiled with an emotion I could not read. He asked in a low voice,
Are you truly willing to marry down to that Cui Mingjue?
I took a sip of tea. The emperor's will cannot be defied. It is not for me to decide. After pondering for a few days, I finally understood. The emperor's arranged marriage was mostly to repay a debt of gratitude, to repay the favor of my father, taking a sword for him on the battlefield back then. Therefore, when my father called off the engagement in my past life, it was truly ungrateful. Pei Zhao is cleverer than me. If even I could see through this, how could he not? Yet, in my past life, he did not offer a single word of advice. Sure enough, Pei Zhao nodded in realization. He hesitated for a moment, then added,
If you are truly unwilling, I can marry you.
These words were beyond my expectations. I was startled, and the teacup in my hand clattered against the table, making a sharp, crisp sound. Pei Zhao's eyelashes fluttered slightly, and a flash of regret suddenly crossed his face. His offer to marry me was merely a polite formality. He was likely terrified that I would readily agree. I lowered my eyes and retorted calmly with sarcasm. And what about Sister Yang? Is she to be your concubine? Pei Zhao stood up abruptly, the wooden chair scraping against the floor with a harsh screech. He stared at me in disbelief, lowering his voice to demand,
How do you know Wenqing is a woman?
I drank the dregs of the tea in my cup, my heart filled with a desolate sorrow. In the past, Pei Zhao married me at his parents' command. Yet, he was never intimate with me. I suspected he was keeping a mistress. I had privately sent people to keep an eye on him, and only then did I uncover this secret. The close bosom friend he always spoke of, the young Master Yang he clung to every single day, Yang Wenqing, was actually a woman. In my past life, after I found out, I threw a terrible tantrum at Pei Zhao. I threw and broke the hairpin he gave me when we married, and smashed his writing brushes, inkstones, and ornaments. Pei Zhao only watched me throw my fit in silence, watching me leave his study in a complete mess, until I wept and cursed in anger. If you are so deeply in love with Yang Wenqing, why didn't you marry her? Why don't I go petition the emperor to grant us a divorce, so you and she can fulfill your wishes and live in perfect harmony? Only then did Pei Zhao raise his hand to cover my lips, stifling the rest of my words back down. He lowered his eyes and said coldly,
Wenqing cannot reclaim her identity as a woman. You are not allowed to speak of divorce ever again. She cannot shake your position as my primary wife. Her life in her household is already difficult enough. If you expose her identity as a woman, how is she supposed to survive? Furong, you do not understand her pain. Do not push people too far anymore.
How deeply affectionate every single word was. It was at that exact moment I realized. Pei Zhao was never a cold, indifferent wind. He was simply never stirred by me. I bit down hard on his wrist, not letting go even when the blood began to flow. Pei Zhao frowned in pain, yet he did not let go of his hand. From then on, Pei Zhao never stepped foot into my chambers again, fearing that I might actually expose Yang Wenqing's disguise. He even sent people to watch over me day in and day out. I set down my teacup. Only now did I truly feel the reality of living my life over again.
Furong,
Pei Zhao reached out and grabbed my wrist.
about Wenqing's true identity. Can you please keep it a secret for her? She has her reasons.
Sure. I spoke up and interrupted him. Pei Zhao didn't quite react for a moment, the tense expression on his face freezing instantly. He looked quite comical. He blankly repeated after me,
Sure.
I nodded and said, of course, sure. I never had any intention of spreading it around anyway. This was no lie. Even in my past life, what I said was merely in a fit of anger. I have no hobby of exposing other people's secrets. Moreover, I knew Yang Wenqing. If I had to put a label on it, she could be considered half a mentor to me. Back then, I was dead set on taking the exam for Qinghe Academy. Father had no choice but to find me a female tutor. He said she was a student who had passed the evaluation, but since Qinghe Academy didn't accept female disciples, she was probably a fraud. That was what I thought. Yet I couldn't bear to reject father's goodwill. The mentor was an extremely gaunt woman, yet she held absolutely nothing back when teaching. She veiled her face when she lectured me, so I never saw her face. It wasn't until after my death in my past life that I saw Yang Wenqing with my own eyes come to my grave to burn a history book. I loved reading history. In this world, apart from father and my mentor, no one else knew. Having received my promise, Pei Zhao let out a long sigh of relief.
Furong,
He looked up at me to explain,
you don't understand Wenqing's ambitions. How could a person like her ever become my concubine? The Cui family is the foremost of noble houses. I was worried you wouldn't be able to handle it, which is why I resorted to this plan. If we get married, and if you change your mind in the future, we can always divorce.
Pei Zhao. I couldn't be bothered to listen to his nonsense anymore. Cui Mingjue's reputation precedes him. What excuse could I possibly use to reject him and choose you? Furthermore, even if all other men on earth ceased to exist, I, Shen Furong, would never marry a man who harbors another woman in his heart. Pei Zhao was left speechless by my blunt and unsparing words. Furious, he flung flung his sleeves back, stood up, and stormed off. I remained completely unmoved, watching with indifference as he walked away in a fit of rage. Yang Wenqing was the unreachable moon in the clouds to him, so he wanted to marry me first, and then wait for Yang Wenqing to change her mind and return to him. How could there be such a beautiful deal in this world? Even if there were, it would never fall into the lap of someone like Pei Zhao. When father heard that Pei Zhao had left me and gone back alone, he was so angry that he paced back and forth in the room. Filled with resentment, he fumed.
Pei Zhao, that heartless beast. His mother even lied to me, saying that if you married into their household, they would surely treat you like their own flesh and blood. Whose family treats their own daughter like this?
I couldn't help but chuckle. The way father looked right now was just like an anxious, bickering village woman, not resembling a general who fought on the battlefields in the slightest. Seeing my light-hearted, carefree attitude, father grew even more frustrated.
You're still laughing. Your father is worried sick. I heard from others that the Cui family alone has over 100 rules. What kind of family sets over 100 rules? Good heavens, with over 100 strict rules weighing down on someone, can the person they raise still be considered human? That would be a living Buddha.
As father spoke, he paced around the room a couple more times. With a face full of worry, he sighed.
Our Yang lost her mother at a young age. You are a girl who grew up running wild. How could you possibly endure that mountain of tiresome rules? Otherwise, just as Madame Pei suggested, why don't you simply marry down to Pei Zhao?
Father, I spoke up, cutting him off. Even if it means walking through fire and water, your daughter will never marry Pei Zhao. He stopped dead in his tracks. He leaned in and sat down beside me.
Yang, tell father the truth. Could it be that Pei Zhao treats you terribly?
Terribly. Not entirely. Pei Zhao and I grew up together. We were childhood sweethearts, even though he was never affectionate with me. When it came to food, clothing, and daily expenses, the PA family never shortchanged me in the slightest. It was just that he never set foot in my room. When my mother-in-law scolded me for having no children, he never spoke up a single word in my defense. When rumors and gossip spread throughout the capital, he never cleared things up for me. Someone like Pei Zhao has always disliked arguing with others, so he would never stand up for me. He would only advise me not to bicker with outsiders. I refused to endure that kind of life any longer. Even if the Cui estate had 1,000 flaws, they had one saving grace. Cui Mingjue's parents had both passed away, leaving him as the sole head of the main branch. Although he never married in my past life after I broke off our engagement, I had read his fine writings, word by word, radiated unyielding pride and integrity. I figured someone like him surely wouldn't watch idly as his wife suffered grievances. Seeing my father's face filled with anxiety, I smiled to comfort him. Father, your daughter simply feels that if I marry Pei Zhao, I certainly won't be happy in the future. Father let out a sigh of relief and nodded in agreement.
That is true. Back when you used to follow him around, he turned a deaf ear to all the hardships you suffered at the Qinghe Academy. Our Yang has such a lively spirit. Marrying him would indeed be suffocating.
I nodded repeatedly, looking at him with eyes full of anticipation. Father gave me a half-hearted, annoyed look and sighed heavily again.
If you truly are unwilling, then let it be. Father originally thought the PA family was a perfect match for us, but father does not fear the Cui family either. If they ever mistreat you, father will go and demand justice for you.
Despite his comforting words, and how reassuring they sounded, when the time came for the Cui family to bring the betrothal gifts, I still couldn't help but feel incredibly nervous. I had always heard that the Cui family valued loyalty and integrity above all, and despised half-hearted and fickle people the most. I used to pursue Pei Zhao relentlessly, yet now I was about to marry Cui Mingjue. How could this not be considered fickle? Since an unmarried lady should not be seen by male guests, father sent me to play in the courtyard next to the main hall. Betrothal gifts flowed into the manor like water. Such a grand display showed just how much the Cui family valued this marriage alliance. But it was also quite puzzling. The uproar in the imperial city over the injustice done to Cui Mingjue had caused such a massive stir, yet the Cui family did absolutely nothing to stop it. I muttered to myself, could it be that Cui Mingjue displeased the emperor? So the emperor deliberately used this marriage to humiliate him. Suddenly, someone behind me chimed in with a laugh.
The emperor has a discerning eye and bestowed such a wonderful marriage upon me. How could it possibly be considered a humiliation?
Startled, I gasped, and as I turned around, I fell right into the visitor's chest. With every breath, I inhaled the scent of magnolia mixed with pine. Extraordinarily familiar. Where had I smelled this scent before? Before I could figure it out, the other person bent down ahead of me, and an exceptionally handsome face suddenly filled my vision. His features were breathtakingly beautiful. In an instant, my mind went completely blank with shock. This instinctive reaction also felt so familiar. The dusty memories of the past instantly broke through the surface. A sudden realization hit me, and I called out blankly, "Brother Xiaohe." The man's eyes crinkled with joy, and he gently corrected me.
Cui Mingjue. It is Brother Mingjue.
What was going on? The brother whose food I used to mooch off of every day when we were kids is my future husband, and he is that Cui Mingjue who is praised as a paragon of Confucian virtue. This news was so shocking. that even after Cui Mingjue pulled me over and sat me down, I still hadn't snapped out of it. Cui Mingjue propped his chin on one hand, looking at me with a beaming smile, exactly the same way he did when we were young. When I was a child, I loved to eat, and my father doted on me. Back then, while other families' daughters looked like delicate Lin Dayu or slender Zhao Feiyan, I looked like a freshly steamed bun. Father pinched my chubby cheeks and finally steeled his heart to force me to lose weight. After dieting for a month or two, I did get thinner, but I also lost all my energy. Until one day, father went out for drinks. After eating a dinner that tasted like grass, I was sighing in the courtyard, starving, when I suddenly caught a whiff of braised pork. Following that scent, I scrambled and climbed up to the top of the wall. Then, I suddenly locked eyes with the young boy in the courtyard. I hadn't thought much of it when climbing the wall, but being caught in the act made me realize how much I behaved like a thief. I froze on top of the wall in embarrassment, but the boy in the courtyard thought I was stuck and couldn't get down. He walked over to the corner of the wall and held out his hand to me.
I've got you, don't worry.
Since things had come to this, I had to jump anyway, but this boy looked so fragile, like a willow in the wind, and I was afraid I would crush him. So I closed my eyes, steeled my heart, avoided his hands, and leaped hard to the side, but I was safely and securely caught. My every breath filled with the scent of magnolia and pine. This guy only looks weak on the outside. After that day, Minghe and I became meal buddies. He didn't like to eat much, so more than half of the meals the servants prepared for him would always be left over. And I hated seeing food go to waste the most. I held a flatbread in my left hand and called out, waving my bamboo chopsticks in my right.
You can't eat that braised pork like that. You need to pair it with pickled sour radish, and then match it with one of Rui Pavilion's.
Minghe followed my lead and stuffed a large piece of steamed roll wrapped around braised pork into his mouth. Then his eyes lit up, and he gave me a big thumbs up. After mooching meals off him for over a month, Minghe suddenly moved away. I climbed over the wall as usual, but the courtyard was empty. There was only an extraordinarily exquisite piece of paper pressed under the corner of the table, with some elegant cursive handwriting left on it. I was illiterate back then, and could only vaguely recognize a few characters.
Back hill, live. Look down, search. Sun, moon, king, domain.
What on earth was this gibberish? I didn't understand it at all. I originally wanted to ask Dad to take a look for me, but as soon as I ran into him, I was cornered and interrogated.
How can you gain weight when we only eat simple meals? Shen Furong, did you steal pork trotters again?
Guiltily, I hung my head. It wasn't just pork trotters. I also ate dongpo pork, shredded pork in garlic sauce, and sweet and sour pork tenderloin. With Dad causing such a distraction, I completely forgot about that paper. As time passed, that paper was lost too. Now that I've met Cui Mingjue, I finally remember it again. Suddenly, it all makes sense to me. It turns out what was written on it was to ask me to go to the Cui family to look for Minghe. Cui Mingjue nodded, looking thoroughly exasperated.
If I had known back then that you couldn't read, I should have drawn a picture for you.
I rubbed the tip of my nose sheepishly. I hadn't expected this guy to be such a foodie, remembering a few meals for so long. At this thought, sudden realization dawned on me. So that imperial decree for our marriage. Could it be that you asked His Majesty? Could it be that you? Cui Mingjue froze for a moment. Then, looking extremely self-conscious, he asked,
How did you know? Have you seen right through me?
I put my arm around his shoulders as well, my face full of understanding. I get it. I get it. You're purely a foodie. Don't worry, once we're married, I'll definitely take you out to eat and drink to your heart's content. Cui Mingjue. I'm afraid you'll lead me astray with food and drink. Before the wedding, it was improper for the betrothed couple to meet. As soon as Cui Mingjue finished speaking, he was snatched away by his elder. When my father heard the report from the attendant, it suddenly dawned on him.
So he was the one who fed you and made you fat back then. I was wondering how you gained weight when we were eating so poorly. Shen Furong, you fooled your father again.
I found an excuse to slip away. Father, I'm heading to the flower viewing party hosted by Minister Song's estate. The water sparkled, and a warm breeze brushed against my face. The moment I appeared, I was surrounded by a crowd of young noble ladies. Pairs of curious eyes stared at me, chattering away in discussion.
Is this the daughter of General Shen? Wasn't it rumored that she is dark and ugly?
You silly thing. How can you believe rumors? She looks so fair and pretty, not at all fierce like General Shen. Their endless praise intoxicated my heart. So gatherings of noble ladies were actually this much fun. No wonder everyone scrambled to attend. Song Yue-jung, the daughter of Minister Song, hurriedly rescued me from the crowd. She furrowed her brow, apologetically reaching out to smooth my messy hairpins.
It is all my fault for chatting with others just now, and neglecting you, sister.
She was already elegant and beautiful, speaking in such soft, warm tones. She was like a gentle spring breeze. I smiled to reassure her. The ladies are all very polite. I am perfectly fine. Upon hearing this, Song Yue-jung pulled me to a seat with a smile.
I heard earlier that you have a gentle nature, sister. Seeing you today, it is indeed true. I heard you studied at Qinghe Academy. If so, do you know Yang Wenqing?
My eyelids twitched. Why would she suddenly bring up Yang Wenqing? In my past life, just as Pei Zhao said, Yang Wenqing never revealed her true identity as a woman until the day I died. Right now, she should still be dressed as a man, as a noble young lady who rarely left her chambers. How could Song Yuezhang be involved with her? Just as I was about to say something, I noticed that though Song Yuezhang looked composed, her ears had already blushed red. What was there left to understand? I replied softly, "Of course I know him. But why are you asking about him, Sister Song?" Song Yuezhang shyly glanced around. Seeing no one nearby, she whispered,
Then do you know what his character is like? Please do not take offense at my abruptness. This person passed the imperial examinations as the third-ranking Manhwa. It is not impossible that he might even become the top scholar in tomorrow's palace examination. My family wishes to claim him as a husband for me upon the release of the results, but I know nothing of his character. I heard you used to be classmates with him, which is why I took the liberty to ask.
I was utterly speechless, not knowing how to respond. Yang Wenqing had once been my tutor. I know he is highly learned, so I am not at all surprised he made it to the palace exam. But as for that fellow's temperament, was truly... During our 3 years sharing a dormitory, she had the best academic performance in the academy. Yet, he was the most isolated student. Even Pei Zhao rarely received any warmth or good temper from her. Later, when I mistakenly thought Pei Zhao was keeping a mistress and sent people to keep an eye on him, I ran into her by accident, wandering about with Pei Zhao, dressed in women's clothing. After I had a falling out with Pei Zhao, she asked to meet me at Fuyue Tower. I went to the meeting, expecting to confront a mistress. But Yang Wenqing ripped open her robes right in front of me. In all my dozen-odd years, how could I have ever seen such a spectacle? I covered my eyes and repeatedly cried out for her to stop. Stop, stop. I get it. You're a woman. What are you trying to do? Yang Wenqing let out a sneer and pulled my hands away from my eyes, leaving me utterly dumbfounded. I was too frightened to utter a single word. Yang Wenqing, however, calmly fastened her buttons with perfect composure. She raised an eyebrow and said,
Now you've seen that I'm a woman. Your husband isn't into men, but he is certainly no saint either. I have my own designs in staying close to Pei Zhao, which I cannot disclose. Inviting you here today is to swear an oath to you. I have absolutely no romantic interest in Pei Zhao.
I furrowed my brows and said, So on your word alone, I'm supposed to play the fool and let you two carry on behind my back? Yang Wenqing's face filled with disdain.
Don't make it sound so ugly. I am investigating a case under the Emperor's secret decree. This case is connected to the Pei Manor, but I cannot share any further details with you. As for someone like Pei Zhao, only someone as blind as you would treasure him like a prize.
Yang Wenqing loved calling me stupid the most. When she was my teacher, she wouldn't just scold me. She would also raise her hand to rap me on the head. Her tongue was so sharp it could drive a person to tears on the spot. At this memory, I gritted my teeth and said to Song Yuezhang, someone like him, only a blind fool, would treasure him like a prize. Song Yuezhang gasped, nodding her head in a daze, gossiping behind someone's back, only to have the target show up at my door the very next day, with a long face. I stared at the scholar standing before me with his arms crossed, my heart full of grievances. Seeing my resentful expression, Yang Wenqing actually seemed amused. His words remained as sharp and biting as ever.
I don't believe I've ever had a grudge against you, Miss Shen. So why did you go out of your way to ruin my marriage prospects?
I gritted my teeth and replied, Young Master Yang, don't you feel you've grown a bit narrow lately?
Oh. What do you mean by that?
I mean, you've become much more narrow-minded. The moment the words left my mouth, I received a rap on the head. Out of sheer reflex, I clutched my head and squatted down. Yang Wenqing froze. I froze as well. This was a habit typical of Shen Furong when she was his student, because after he rapped me on the head, he always loved to punish me with copying texts. But as long as I clutched my head and curled up on the ground, he would be utterly helpless against me. So I had developed the habit of squatting down to throw a tantrum. But the current me was not supposed to know his true identity. How could I have reacted this way toward her? Amidst our mutual, dead silence, Yang Wenqing was the first to speak up.
Pei Zhao has been acting strange lately. He often loiters around your manor gates. You must be very careful.
His trip here today was actually to warn me. Pei Zhao was indeed acting strange. Seeing my hesitation, Yang Wenqing reached out and ruffled my hair.
Don't speak ill of me again. In the future, Song Yuezhang now takes a detour whenever she sees me. The Pei Manor is involved in a mysterious case of the former dynasty. It is for the best that you have broken ties with him. Take good care of yourself. Yang.
A cool breeze swept through the corridor, fluttering his green robes. I lowered my eyes, watching his figure fade into the distance, and let out a soft sigh. The path Yang Wenqing had chosen to tread was incredibly difficult. She dressed as a man. It is to protect her birth mother, a concubine, and her younger sister. In my past life, I blamed her too. I blamed her because, knowing full well my affection for Pei Zhao, She insisted on entangling herself with him. The emperor had secretly ordered her to investigate the case. Since it involved the Pei family, Pei Zhao was the perfect breakthrough point. I remembered the words she told me.
Yang, it is much harder for a woman to get things done than a man to achieve one's goal quickly. It is only natural to use any means necessary.
I had no right to make her lose sight of her main goal for my sake. Since she had mentioned Pei Zhao, I naturally sent people to spy on his schemes. After hearing my questions, the gatekeeper's expression turned peculiar.
Young Master Pei did come by for several days, but each day as if possessed. He just stared at your courtyard. That day, I asked him if he needed me to announce him, but he just waved his hand. He only said he had failed you, and that you hated him. I was quite puzzled. You were perfectly fine, so why did he babble about failing you?
The gatekeeper babbled on, but his words did not register with me. Only one sudden thought exploded in my mind. In this life, I was never betrothed to Pei Zhao. He shouldn't be talking about owing me anything. But if it were the Pei Zhao from my past life, then it would make perfect sense. He was actually reborn too. I ordered a secret investigation. Pei Zhao had been making significant moves lately, as if premonishing something. He sent his elderly mother back to their hometown in Fuyang. And because outsiders gossiped about him having a homosexual affair with Yang Wenqing, he cut ties with Yang Wenqing in broad daylight. No wonder Yang Wenqing noticed he was acting strange. But if Pei Zhao had been reborn, why was he hanging around outside my estate? I was utterly bewildered, unable to fathom his intentions. Unless the Pei family indeed had something to do with Yang Wenqing's case, and he wanted to seek someone's help. In my past life, I died young, so I never learned what happened next. But thinking it over again and again, it seems this is the only logical explanation. If it were a minor case, he wouldn't need to beg for help. But if it were a major case, what help could my family's manner possibly offer? I couldn't figure it out, so I could only order my subordinates to be extra vigilant and to chase Pei Zhao away whenever they saw him. I also repeatedly urged my father to watch his words and deeds in court. For half a month, nothing went wrong with the Pei family. However, Yang Wenqing, surprisingly, actually married Song Yuezhang. I invited Song Yuezhang to go pray for blessings with me, but upon arriving at the agreed-upon dense forest, Song Yuezhang was nowhere to be seen. Just as I was wondering why, a sudden commotion broke out outside the carriage. The servant driving the carriage recognized the visitor. He managed to let out only a single shout before falling silent.
Young Master Pei, what do you think you're doing?
My heart tightened. I hurriedly lifted the carriage curtain, only to find the guards I had brought already lying collapsed all over the ground. Hearing the sound, Pei Zhao looked up at me. He was drenched in crimson, looking like an asura that had crawled out of hell. He wiped his palms repeatedly on his cotton robe before reaching his hand out to me.
Don't panic, Furong. I only wanted to see you, but they just had to block my way, so I had no choice but to slaughter them all.
His terrifying appearance made my heart leap into my throat. I forced myself to stay calm and jumped down from the carriage with the help of his arm. The hidden crossbow concealed inside my sleeve was already quietly cocked. This was given to me by Cui Mingjue. Although I carried it with me every day, this was the first time I was actually using it. I was deeply afraid Pei Zhao would notice. Pei Zhao stared at me, recalling who knows what.
Furong.
He raised his hand and wiped blood across my lips.
You looked just as beautiful back then when you were betrothed to me. Before that, I had always thought of you only as a sister, but the moment I lifted your bridal veil, I suddenly came to my senses. To hell with being sister and brother. You are my wife.
Pei Zhao took my hand, his tone thick with reminiscence.
Furong, Yang Wenqing is nothing but a shameless villain. She only got close to me to ruin the Pei family. Since you refused to marry Cui Mingjue, can the two of us get back together? You always doted on me the most. Go and beg General Shen on your knees. Beg your father to trade his military merits for the safety of the Pei family. Then we can get married. What do you say?
I lowered my eyes, silently allowing him to pull me into his embrace. The sharp tip of the hidden crossbow in my sleeve silently pressed against his heart. Without any hesitation, I pulled the trigger of the sleeve arrow. Before Pei Zhao could even react, he reached out to grab me one last time as he fell to the ground. I picked up his sharp blade and, with a face as cold as frost, stabbed him ruthlessly once more. He lay paralyzed in a pool of blood, using the last of his strength to squeeze out his final words.
Furong, do you really hate me this much?
Looking at his painful death, I finally said, Pei Zhao, since you remember your past life, how did you ever dare to come find me? If I hadn't been powerless to change things in our past life, how could I have let you live on for so many years? Pei Zhao's breathing grew faint, his voice slurred and incoherent.
After you died in our past life, the PA family met with immediate disaster. I suppose the heavens were helping me, sending me back to make amends to you. Furong, don't blame me. I will wait for you on the road to the Yellow Springs.
I furrowed my brows and swiftly delivered a clean, decisive blow to end his life. Still trying to curse me even on his deathbed, this man, Pei Zhao, is truly disgusting to his very bones. My life has been entangled with Pei Zhao's for 2 lifetimes. Now that he has died by my hand, it can be considered his good fortune. I do not know what disaster he meant when he said the PA family fell, but I imagine it must have been unpleasant. My silk skirt was stained with spots of Pei Zhao's blood, which made me feel quite annoyed. This was a newly tailored dress of mine. I pulled the sleeve arrow from Pei Zhao's chest and buried it. Then stealing my heart, slashed several bloody gashes onto my own arm. Only then did I fire the signal flare for help. The mountain patrol guards arrived extremely quickly. The leader actually turned out to be an old friend of my father's. Without even glancing at Pei Zhao's corpse, he rushed forward to support me.
Oh dear, did you run into bandits? Little Furong, quick, carry her into the medical clinic.
Leaning against his forearm, I feigned weakness and asked, Uncle Zhao, how is Pei Zhao?
He was stabbed several times by the bandits.
Uncle Zhao glanced at me and whispered in my ear,
Rest assured, he is already completely dead and cold. The Pei family committed treason. No one will seek justice for him.
Hearing this, I fainted with peace of mind. When I woke up again, I was being held tightly in someone's arms. Cui Mingjue pressed his forehead against mine and let out a long sigh of relief. He did not say anything else, but only sighed repeatedly.
It is enough that you are alive.
I thought of Song Yuezhang and asked, where is sister Yuezhang? Is she alright? Yang Wenqing walked in from outside the room.
She is safe and sound. Pei Zhao had someone trip her horse, so she took a fall. She is currently resting at her manor.
I let out a sigh of relief. Yang Wenqing spoke again.
Rest easy. The Pei family was implicated in the treason plot of the former dynasty, and they have already been sentenced to the execution of their entire clan. Pei Zhao crossed paths with the bandits. It can be considered that he took a step ahead to the underworld, blazing a trail for his entire family.
Then Pei Zhao really got off easy. Seeing me lost in thought, Cui Mingjue gently rubbed my hand and mumbled softly,
Yang, our wedding date is approaching, yet you had to be dragged into this bloody mess. That scoundrel Pei Zhao truly deserved to die.
The story of bandits robbing him of his wealth could deceive outsiders, but it could not hide the truth from him. I touched his forehead and advised, let's not mention him anymore. Since he is dead, let it go. Outside the room, sparrows were chirping. It was a rare, bright morning. I narrowed my eyes and suddenly asked, Teacher, on which day has your wedding with Sister Yuezhang been set? Yang Wenqing was stunned for a moment. When he came to his senses, he raised his palm as if to strike me, but he lost his nerve the moment he brought it down. He replied testily,
You disrespectful little wild monkey.
I joyfully snuggled into Cui Mingjue's arms. The room was filled with joy and laughter, and I was the one laughing the most happily. To hell with that absurd promise to meet in the underworld. In this lifetime, I, Shen Furong, will surely live a long and healthy life. Cui Mingjue's side story. The reputation of the Cui family, merely by being displayed, could make everyone green with envy. Yet, Cui Mingjue wanted no part of it. His education began at the age of 3. In the morning, he would start studying poetry, the Book of Documents, the Book of Rites, the Book of Changes, and the Spring and Autumn Annals. When noon arrived, he would begin studying the classics, political reforms, and mathematics. Of the 24 hours in a day, he spent 20 of them in the study room. As the eldest young master of the Cui estate, he carried everyone's expectations on his shoulders, even though he excelled in every subject far beyond ordinary people. But it was still never enough. That 1 month spent with Shen Furong was the most carefree and happiest time of his life. Shen Furong was simply amazing. The daily meals that usually made him gag after a single bite, once prepared by her hands, would become incredibly enticing. Eating with her, he didn't have to abide by the rule of silence during meals, nor did he have to follow the etiquette of never taking, the etiquette of not taking more than 3 bites of any dish. Just listening to her chatter, Cui Mingjue could wolf down 2 extra bowls of rice, but this past month or so was stolen time after all. When the time came, he had to return to the Cui manor and go back to being the widely praised Cui Mingjue. Later, the emperor hoped he would marry a princess. To keep the powerful clans in check, he wasn't willing to do it, so he simply found a strip of white silk and made a show of wanting to end his life. Shen Furong was right. When conventional methods don't work, a desperate last-ditch effort isn't a bad strategy. This completely terrified the Cui household. As a prestigious clan of 100 years, their eldest young master had suddenly developed a hidden affliction of seeking death. Whenever he was unhappy, he would pull a hemp rope from his pocket and pretend to hang himself. If word of this got out, the Qinghe Academy run by the Cui family would have to shut down. Having tasted success with this trick, Cui Mingjue went to the palace with his hemp rope. He pulled out the thick rope and started sizing up the imperial study to end his own life. In the end, His Majesty had no choice.
Cui Mingjue, put down that hemp rope for me. Does your Cui family want to rebel? In what way is the princess not good enough for you?
Cui Mingjue apologized with the utmost respect, yet his hands didn't stop tying the hemp rope for a single second.
Since your majesty is wary of the Cui clan, why not bestow General Shen's daughter upon me? General Shen surrendered his military tally long ago, and he even saved your majesty's life. Under his watchful eye, I would never dare to step out of line.
The emperor thought it over and found it quite reasonable. So, with a wave of his hand, he granted the request.
Then I shall grant you this. Now take your trash and get out of my sight.
Extra side story. The husband my father snatched from me from the examination graduates turned out to be a woman. When I was cornered in a private room at the inn and she confessed the truth, I was utterly dumbfounded. How could she be a woman? The person I had been in love with for so many years. How could she be a woman? But Yang Wenqing didn't notice my inner turmoil and went on talking to herself.
As you can see, I am a woman. For the sake of my official career, I have never resumed my identity as a woman. So, please go home and ask your father to stop cornering me. I really cannot be the son-in-law of your Song family.
My mind was in a haze, yet I asked back instinctively.
Why not?
This time, it was Yang Wenqing's turn to be stunned. She seemed extremely puzzled by my question, and her entire expression looked somewhat comical. Amused by her look, I became even more determined in my thoughts.
If you are unwilling to resume your female identity, could you possibly remain unmarried for the rest of your life? If you marry me, not only will I not cause you any trouble, but the Song family can also help you advance further in your career. Are you still unwilling even under these terms?
Yang Wenqing was clearly swayed by my words, yet she still shook her head.
The tasks I perform for the emperor have always been dirty and dangerous. I do not want to drag you down with me. Furthermore, marrying me holds very little benefit for you.
Shen Furong once said that only a fool would treasure someone like Yang Wenqing as a prize. Perhaps I really did have some eye trouble. Otherwise, why would I feel a sense of joy in my heart, seeing her try so hard to push me away? I curled my lips into a smile and winked at him playfully.
What if I am in love with you? To be matched with the one I adore, for me, would be the greatest fortune in the world.
Yang Wenqing suddenly stood up, knocking over the teacup at her hand in her fluster. The tea soaked more than half of her robe. With her ears blushing red, she reiterated,
I am a woman.
I smoothly handed her a handkerchief.
I know, but I admire you. Could you possibly turn into a man? Hayes, the one I love, refuses to marry me. Then my only choice is to shave my head and become a nun, spending my days with the Green Lantern and ancient Buddha.
This time, even Yang Wenqing's neck flushed completely red. With a sudden leap, she fled. Within a few days, the Yang residents sent over the betrothal gifts. Although Yang Wenqing worked for the emperor in secret, on the surface, she was still a poor scholar. This pile of betrothal gifts must have emptied her family's savings. Pressed at the very bottom was a divorce agreement that already bore Yang Wenqing's signature. My brother muttered in annoyance.
It wasn't in vain that you pestered father for half a month with stories of poor scholars repaying kindness. Your dream has finally come true. If Yang Wenqing hadn't achieved academic honors, you would probably be more anxious than anyone. I really don't know what kind of love potion he gave you.
I was overjoyed and replied with a smile.
He is exceptionally talented. It is just that his family background is a bit modest. How could he fail to make the list of successful candidates?
My maid Kai curled her lip, putting away the poems that her mistress had praised over and over again into a large chest.
Every masterpiece is by the hand of the same person. I don't know what makes it so worthy of my young mistress copying it so often.
A cool breeze blew past, revealing the signature of the scroll's author. Philosophical notes, Yang Wenqing.